Members of the Mormon History Association have come to Independence, Missouri for their 20th annual meeting, and the hottest topic is the Martin Harris Letter. The 1830 letter describes some of the early experiences of Joseph Smith in magical terms. The letter itself is locked up in the LDS Church archives, but two Brigham Young University historians who have spent a year researching it showed slides of the letter and reported their findings. Dean Jesse has concluded that the letter is authentic, while Ron Walker reported that magic and money digging were common in Joseph Smith's day.
It seems that we now have some handles on getting at the real folk religion of 17th, 18th, 19th century America.
It ties the evidence that we've had before to the evidence that has been accepted by members of the church. And so what we have is a much fuller and more elaborate picture of early Mormonism.
We now have created a broader and a richer view of Joseph Smith's environment and of Joseph Smith himself.
The jury is still out on the theological implications of the Salamander Letter, but there seems to be a consensus on one thing. The letter's content, what it says, what it describes, is within the social context of early 19th century America. Dwayne Cardall, Eyewitness News, Independence, Missouri.
The earliest Mormon documents.
Mark Hofmann made his living buying and selling old documents. His first big find was this document, Book of Mormon characters copied by Joseph Smith himself from the gold plates. It was the oldest known handwriting of Joseph Smith.
I think it's exciting just to think that apparently this piece of paper was copied by Joseph Smith's own hand. The characters were just straight from the gold plates that were right there.
Later, Hofmann found other famous manuscripts, the Joseph Smith, the Third Blessing, a document in which Joseph Smith designated his son to succeed him as president of the church. The most famous find was the so-called Salamander Letter, but there were hundreds of other documents relating to Mormon history, which he sold mainly to private collectors. In a 1982 interview with Sunstone magazine, Hofmann said he was in the business to make money, and these documents could be valuable. In an interview on Good Friends today, one LDS historian, Maureen Beecher, said their worth could be in the thousands.
For instance, Elizar Snow is one of my subjects. There is on the market today a copy of her Oh My Father, for which the asking price is $25,000.
Shelley Osterloh, Eyewitness News.
It was the bombing of Hofmann that turned the direction of the investigation around. Until then, lawmen were looking at financial problems involving CFS. Salt Lake County Sheriff Pete Hayward says that aspect of the case hasn't been dropped.
Still under investigation, and there are a lot of leads that are still being worked on at this time.
Hayward says the common thread linking all the principals is the interest they had in historical documents dealing with early Mormon church history. The sheriff says at this point they really don't have their fingers on a specific motive, but the finding of the so-called McClellan papers in the wreckage of Hofmann's car seems to point in that direction.
That made us think that a possibility of either somebody who maybe got burns in the sense of the word and didn't get paid, or that some documents might have vanished or disappeared. We don't really know what might have happened to that.
It's also known investigators found in the wreckage of the car a cashier's check for $180,000, plus $90,000 in American Express money orders. It's not known if the check or money orders were made out to Hofmann or someone else. Found at Hofmann's home, in addition to a number of documents dating to the 1830s, equipment which could possibly be used in antiquing papers. Hayward says because of this, Hofmann is the prime suspect.
At this particular time, he's our prime suspect, and that was based upon the circumstances of the bombing of Mr. Hofmann and his automobile and some of the items that were found that would connect Mr. Hofmann to the other two bombings.
Salt Lake County Attorney Ron Yengich has been retained as Hofmann's lawyer, but the sheriff points out that doesn't mean other suspects are no longer under investigation as conspirators or partners in the bizarre bombing case. Richard Bingham, Eyewitness News.
When officers searched the trunk of Mark Hofmann's sports car, they found, among other things, a collection of what is said to be early Mormon historical documents, items that have been the object of rumors for months. They're called the McClellan Collection after William E. McClellan, one of the first apostles in the Mormon Church. A police spokesman says Mark Hofmann wanted to sell the collection to the LDS Church. A church spokesman confirms that Hofmann met with LDS apostle Dallin Oaks on Tuesday afternoon, just hours after the first bomb killed Stephen Christensen. It's rumored that the collection consists of affidavits, diaries, and a piece of Egyptian papyrus containing facsimile number 2 from the church's scripture, the Pearl of Great Price.
I would say we're talking about priceless. I mean, this is high-powered, important, priceless stuff.
Police Chief Bud Willoughby confirms that documents, including an apparent Egyptian artifact, were removed from the sports car. He says the papyrus, about 1 foot wide and 2 feet long, was enclosed in plastic and appeared to be undamaged. Ron Walker says the collection has a potential worth of hundreds of thousands of dollars. He's concerned police officials might mishandle the documents, jeopardizing their use by researchers.
When you find new documents, you change your mind about certain things in the past, and I don't see that as institution destructive at all. I suspect we're not going to find anything here that's destructive of Mormonism, but it will allow us new perspectives.
Meantime, police say they have found a cashier's check for $180,000, which they believe was part of a transaction involving the McClellan collection. Dwayne Cardall, Eyewitness News.
The FBI won't be picking up the Martin Harris letter until sometime on Monday. It was U.S. Attorney Brent Ward who asked for the so-called Salamander Letter because it might have something to do with last week's bombings in Salt Lake. The FBI lab will be doing its own analysis to see if the letter is genuine. BYU historian Ronald Walker was involved in examining the Harris letter earlier this year. He says he welcomes the FBI test.
We have a high probability that that letter is authentic. And we have done exhaustive and careful study of it. I would be surprised if our judgment is overturned. But we've got to be open to further information.
The Harris letter isn't the only document involving Mark Hofmann and the LDS Church, but the bombing investigation is centered on an alleged collection of documents known as the McClellan Papers. Shannon Flynn is believed to have been working with Hofmann on the sale of those papers. KSL has learned Hofmann had 2 meetings set up last Wednesday in the Walker Bank building with an apparent buyer for the so-called McClellan collection. An attorney representing an unidentified buyer apparently had a large sum of money in hand to make the purchase. An expert in historical documents was there also. Hofmann didn't show for the 10 a.m. appointment, but called and asked to meet at 2 p.m. At 2:45, Hofmann was injured in a bomb blast. KSL has also learned that the original appointment included Stephen Christensen, but Christensen was already dead. Richard Bingham, Eyewitness News.
Utah County resident Ed Ashman is a scholar on Egyptian writing, and so far the only person who will admit to seeing a portion of what Hofmann claimed to be part of the McClellan collection. Ashman's relationship with Hofmann and his associates began more than a year ago when Hoffman's group contacted Ashman to see if he could authenticate 4 pieces believed to be from the McClellan collection.
There was facsimile 2 and 3 documents with writing on them. They're very small.
But when Ashman actually saw a piece Hofmann said was from the collection, it was none of the 4 pieces described to him earlier. Instead, it was this piece of papyrus with Egyptian characters and symbols on it.
Ashman says he began to doubt Hofmann's claims when photographs of all 5 McClellan pieces were never delivered as promised. Despite numerous postponements, Hofmann assured Ashman the photographs would be handed over for his inspection.
On the day of the bombings, this man, Shannon Flynn, who was Hoffmann's personal photographer, contacted Ashman about the photos, but by then it was too late. On the next day, Hofmann was also injured by a bomb blast, and he became the prime suspect in the case. And just yesterday, Flynn was arrested at his home, an alleged accomplice in the bombings. The existence of the McClellan collection remains a mystery.
The fact that Mr. Hofmann never did produce the 4 fragments, and the one piece that I did see wasn't any of the 4 described fragments, raises a very serious question in my mind. Did those others really exist?
Joel Munson, Eyewitness News.
Al Rust has a coin shop on Main Street and says he knew Mark Hofmann about as well as anyone. For more than 8 years, they did business together, a business established on implicit trust in each other. Rust says Hofmann told him he had a line on the McClellan collection but needed help buying them. Rust gave Hofmann $150,000, believing Hofmann had a buyer.
He called in the evening and said that I've sold the collection for $300,000. He told me it was sold in the Mormon church, and he emphasized it would be very important that there would be no publicity and that I had to be totally confidential and nothing could be said of this transaction.
Rust tells a story of delays and missed meetings and a sale that never materialized to either the church or a man in Texas.
He said now he was going to donate the collection. The fellow in Texas wasn't able to do this, and he said that he had a new item that he was selling to the U.S. government for over $1 million. He would pay me then, which would be by September 1st, the money which he owed me, and that he then would be donating the collection himself to the church.
Rust says Hofmann eventually gave him a check for $132,000, but it bounced. Rust says Hofmann came to him with a story of personal financial crisis. Rust gave Hofmann until November 1st to come up with the money. Then last week the bombs went off. Rust approached authorities about his dealings with Hofmann.
He informed me that I was in extreme danger and that my family and I should take every precaution.
Later, Rust met with police and with LDS church officials, including Elder Dallin Oaks, and cleared up a misunderstanding.
They cleared up many things about the confusion, why I was supposed to have the McClellan letter, and I was thinking they had it.
Does Rust think Mark Hofmann ever had the McClellan collection?
I did. I don't now. From the information that the police and the church have given me, I don't believe there is that collection.
As for Hofmann's alleged involvement in last week's bombings, Rust suggests a possible motive.
Mark Hofmann, if you went to New York and went into the very finest places, he is respected, he is an authority, he is had to be upboard at all his transactions, because in his business only one bad one would ruin him.
Dwayne Cardall, Eyewitness News.
We're under mandate to keep a record of that which is said concerning the church, that which is for and that which is against. If this goes on, we'll have to find a lot more room to house all the newspaper clippings.
Newsweek magazine labeled it the case of the white salamander, and the Denver Post front page on Sunday called it the curse of the Salamander Letter. Brief descriptions of last week's bombings have been followed by much more detailed accounts of the Martin Harris letter and the McClellan papers. They describe the letters like this, the latest disturbing discovery about the origins of Mormonism. Church spokesman Jerry Cahill calls the coverage distorted and blames it on the lack of time or space and the limited knowledge of the LDS religion.
It comes off not quite straight, if you will. It's difficult to put all those elements in a package and to do the church justice in a larger sense.
Cahill feels yesterday's press conference answered all the questions and said today the phones had stopped ringing. And he says while the coverage has been intense, it's not unusual.
In terms of interest, I suppose this might rank maybe about third. I would think that the priesthood revelation for intensity of queries and coverage would, in my mind, would rank number one. The finding of the so-called Howard Hughes will up in the offices of the Public Communications Department, and that was big. And then I think maybe in terms of intensity of interest, this.
Cahill feels church leaders explained their position yesterday, and now the reports will turn back to the police investigation. Allison Barlow, Eyewitness News.
The Haunted Man is a short Christmas story published in 1848 by Charles Dickens. A first edition book version of the story, similar to this one, would be worth about $200. But Utah Mark Hofmann reportedly found the original manuscript in Dickens' own hand, papers that could be worth tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. A Salt Lake book dealer agrees an original manuscript would be valuable.
I've never had an original manuscript. I've had first editions. I've had letters of Charles Dickens. When you're dealing in manuscripts, you're dealing in, well, any price. If I think it's worth $100,000, $200,000, I might find a collector of Dickens who would pay that.
A group of Utah investors put up an estimated $300,000 to stake Hofmann in his attempt to sell the haunted man. They once hoped to double their money. Hofmann's attorney confirms a New York dealer is trying to sell it, and he says a sale is in the works. Weller says he's dealt with Hofmann on many transactions, that Hofmann is an amazing man with a marvelous trait.
He has a great detective mind, knows how and where to find. He'll read books to find out where a person might have moved, where he left, what his last residence was, who his in-laws were, and in time he came up with some great manuscripts this way.
If the haunted man sells, Hofmann would share in the proceeds, but an attorney for the one investor group wonders if other investors also put money into the documents. Lynn Packer, Eyewitness News.
If Mark didn't do it, who did?
I wish I knew. Mark wishes he knew.
Bill Hofmann is speaking out to set the record straight, to dispel some of the stories he says the police are telling. And he says those stories started the very first night Mark Hofmann was bombed, when police held a live press conference.
Bringing, we hope, some of the phase of the investigation in concerning the 3 bombings in Salt Lake City somewhat to a climax at this time.
That first night, no one should ever have to experience. And after that first night, after watching the media, watching television, for 2 weeks, I had no desire even to turn the television on.
Bill Hofmann says police are wearing blinders in their single-minded determination to pin 3 bombings and 2 murders on his son. And he shed some light on the story. Eyewitness News interviewed a witness who placed Mark Hofmann at Stephen Christensen's office the morning Christensen was killed.
Does Mark have an alibi?
I don't know if you'd call it an alibi. Mark was at home that morning.
Hofmann says Mark's wife, Dory, told that to the police when she was questioned the day after Mark was himself bombed. The police investigation centers around Mark's attempts to sell parts of the McClellan collection to a number of different buyers. On this issue, Mark's father cannot help.
Did Mark ever have the McClellan collection?
There is a McClellan collection.
Okay, that's step 1.
Mm-hmm.
Did Mark have it?
I don't really know.
Did you ever see it?
I never saw it. I did not know of a McClellan collection before I heard it from the media.
Bill says his son's life, his family's life, will never be the same again. But on this Thanksgiving Day, Bill says the family still has much to be thankful for.
We do take a great amount of comfort in the love that we're experiencing from our neighbors and friends and family. And this is a beautiful thing.
Dave Thompson, Eyewitness News.
For several days last week, a room in the archives area of the church office building was outfitted with a special lock, infrared equipment, and 2 forensic documents experts to examine papers sold by Mark Hofmann. Some of the documents were flown to Salt Lake from Independence, Missouri, the chief one being the so-called Joseph Smith III blessing. In 1981, Hofmann sold the blessing to the LDS Church, which in turn traded it to the reorganized church. The document was authenticated before the trade, but nonetheless is being re-examined by investigators as a possible forgery. George Throckmorton, one of the experts hired by the county, says it's too sensitive to discuss. Tomorrow, prosecutors are scheduled to meet with Mark Hofmann's attorneys. Salt Lake County is investigating Hofmann both for alleged murder and for alleged fraud. Both city and county investigators have asked the county attorney's office to file charges. Sheriff Pete Hayward, without naming a suspect, says his people have had a good case prepared for more than a month. He's considering asking that district court judges form a grand jury to review evidence collected by deputies, thereby possibly bypassing the county attorney's office and getting charges filed. Lynn Packer, Eyewitness News. One reason for the delay may center on laboratory tests conducted on early Mormon documents here in Utah and at the FBI crime lab in Washington. One key document tested by both labs is the so-called Salamander Letter, a document the FBI examined for almost 3 months. While the FBI will not say what tests were performed, it's believed they did handwriting analysis, electron microscope examination, ultraviolet examination, and possible chemical analysis. The FBI will not release results, but sources indicate they found no evidence it was a forgery. 2 county-paid experts examined the letter during the past several days after the FBI returned it to Utah. We were able to get this video only after the examiners and documents were removed from the lab. Sources say the local experts ran tests similar to the FBI's and another test involving pH paper like this one being done at the University of Utah. Sources in the county attorney's office say the litmus test may indicate the Salamander Letter is a forgery by showing a chemical was used to artificially age the paper. Because the FBI and local results may differ, the county wants to do further tests before making forgery a part of their charges. The man the county wants to charge is documents dealer Mark Hofmann. Their theory is he had been forging and selling documents and murdered to keep the alleged fraud from being discovered. Lynn Packer, Eyewitness News.
Mark Hofmann is charged with murdering Stephen Christensen and Kathy Sheets, and he's charged with placing the bombs that killed them and injured him. But he's also charged with 13 counts of theft by deception and 9 counts of communications fraud. In other words, he's accused of scheming to defraud others. In 8 of the counts, the victims of the alleged fraud are not named. The county attorney obviously wants to protect their identity. But some familiar names appear as victims in the other charges. Even in those charges, though, there's no mention of specific documents or incidents of fraud.
I can't identify them offhand. I can't do it.
Why did you seal the public record?
They're sealed to avoid unnecessary pretrial publicity and because it's usual practice in cases of this dimension and this profile to do so.
The LDS Church is named as victim in 7 counts. The church over the years has acquired through purchase, donation, or trade scores of documents from Hofmann, beginning with the Anton manuscript in 1980. President Gordon B. Hinckley of the LDS First Presidency is named as victim in 1 theft by deception count. In October, he acknowledged acquiring 2 historic documents from Hofmann, including this 1825 letter written by Joseph Smith. Provo businessman Brent Ashworth is named as the victim in 2 theft by deception counts. Ashworth is a documents collector who has had numerous dealings with Hofmann over the years. Another alleged victim is coin dealer Alvin Rust. He loaned Hofmann $150,000 to buy the McClellan collection. Rust has not seen the collection nor his money. In another count, investment counselor Tom Wilding is named as a victim. Wilding put together a group of investors to buy an original Charles Dickens manuscript Hofmann said he was peddling. And finally, there's a theft by deception charge listing Gary Sheets and Stephen Christensen as victims. Christensen and Sheets paid Hofmann $40,000 for the Salamander Letter, which they later donated to the LDS Church. Dwayne Cardall, Eyewitness News.
It was in this room in the library at Utah State University that Mark Hofmann and archivist A.J. Simmons removed the Anthon transcript from a 17th century Bible. The document had been folded and glued between pages so it could not be read until taken from the book.
I took a scalpel and literally a little chisel to get that document out of the Bible.
They discovered a list of characters apparently transcribed from the golden plates by Mormon Church founder Joseph Smith, the same transcript reportedly reviewed by a Professor Charles Anthon. The transcript discovery was widely publicized and brought Mark Hofmann into contact with top leaders in the Mormon Church, a connection he would use to sell other major finds to the church. But the county attorney's office alleges the Anthon document was merely the first of several forgeries marketed to collectors. The sources say Simmons was the first to be duped by Hofmann.
For all of those items to be forged is to paint a pretty elaborate conspiracy.
Simmons says he does not buy the forgery theory. A theory, though, that was strengthened yesterday when national documents expert Kenneth Rendell said he believes the major documents Hofmann sold to the church are fakes. But the defense stands firm.
Mark's position is, as it's always been, that he's not guilty of any of the offenses, including the forgeries. He was a little bit upset by the Rendell news, but generally feels very comfortable with the way the case is going.
There's a bomber out there. No, I don't think it's Mark.
Simmons says police have not interviewed him about his role in the discovery of the Anthon transcript. He said the USU Library has purchased 3 documents from Hofmann, documents police did not subpoena for examination. Lynn Packer, Eyewitness News.